Welcome to the MVP Podcast, where we talk about anything NBA. I'm Sam Holcroft, alongside Gage Zollicoffer and Peyton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. Today, we're going to do a tier list of the NBA young cores. So what we did is we went through and tried to figure out all 30 teams' young cores. And what we did was we kind of made some qualifications for that. So they have to have at least 3 guys on roster next season. So if they are not on roster or aren't on a contract extension, they don't count. If they are on a player option, we're technically not counting that either. And then there has to be at least 3 guys under the age of 25 years. So some teams will have 4 guys, some teams will have 3. But first off, let's talk about the teams that don't qualify. We got the 76ers, who has nobody except for 2 guys on contract for next year, which is Embiid and Paul Reed. So they don't count. The Clippers don't have 3 notable guys under the age of 25. Neither do the Bucks. And the Suns, Celtics, Knicks, and Nets don't have any 3 guys that are notable within that kind of age range. So they didn't count. There's 4 teams that we could make a case to get in, but decided to just have them be honorable mentions. And that's the Nuggets, even though they do have MPJ, but Peyton Watson, Christian Braun just aren't enough to kind of get them up there. The Lakers have Austin Reeves and Jared Vanderbilt, but Reddish and Hayes are both in player options. With the Jazz, we got Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Davion Mitchell. Still, some of those guys play key roles, but just not enough to break into the other 19 teams that we're talking about. And then the Jazz with Sexton, George, Walker Kessler, and Taylor Hendricks. Just not enough to be proven to be into that section. So now moving on to the 19 teams that we talked about. So there's 7 teams that we all agreed are in the same tier. We broke them into a dynasty core, an elite core, a good core, and then solid pieces. So do we want to start at the bottom with the teams that we all agreed on, or do we want to start at the top?
Let's start at the top. That's the. I think that one's easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first team that we all agreed is in the dynasty core. We want to take a hint?
OKC?
The Thunder, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. OKC. We put in.
They have everything you
top,
look for.
And more.
And more. I'll just kind of do a brief breakdown real quick. Obviously, you have your star player in Shai. You have great building blocks with J-Dub and Chet. But then you also have some nice little pieces that give them some depth, whether that's Giddey or Jay Will or Cason Wallace as well. So not only do they have the top tier players that you look for, but they also have the depth, and then they also have the coaching that's going to be able to uplift them. And then they also have draft picks. So I don't really think you can go wrong putting them in dynasty core here.
Gage?
I mean, what else is there to say? Peyton already said it all. I mean, how often do you have, even without Shai, you still have a pretty strong core. So it's pretty insane, what they got. So that was the easiest one.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Then for the second one, we all agreed on one team as well. So since Gage, Peyton spearheaded the first one, I'll let you spearhead the second one with the Memphis Grizzlies. We all agreed it could be in that dynasty core.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with the growth of Ja Morant and especially Desmond Bane as the perfect fit against Ja Morant, who's a slasher and can kick out, it's just a match. It's a match made in heaven. And then combine that with, did he end up getting Defensive Player of the Year? Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Yeah.
Yeah, so combine that with him as well, and then you have, who's the fourth guy? I'm blanking.
We put G.G. Jackson.
Yeah.
G.G. Jackson?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if he's going to stay there for long, but...
he just got drafted this year.
Yeah, but... I don't know. How is he doing okay? I haven't been following.
Yeah, he's been playing well since everyone's been out. He's had a couple 30-point games.
Mm-hmm. But with those big three, you already have a big three here, and each one of them are capable of winning their own awards. I'm pretty sure they all have won some sort of award, right? I
I
feel
don't know
like
about Bane.
Bane, I
Ben.
feel like he could get a six man or most improved player.
Nah, I don't think so. Because he's a starter, so he wouldn't get 6 man of the year. And then if he got most improved, I wouldn't know about it. But he's like in that Mikal Bridges role where he's not quite good enough to be an all-star because the West is so loaded, but he's like good enough skill-wise and production-wise that he could be one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you can really ask for in a second to third option.
Yeah,
On a playoff team.
I think you can just build around that team, really. So it's kind of like, arguably, it's as good as the OKC core, but with less depth.
Right.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that on top of that, I agree with everything you said. I think on top of that, you have to factor in that the Thunder's guys are a little younger, so maybe they have a little bit room to grow. Plus, I think Shai is probably going to end up being a better player, or already is, than Ja. So that, it's kind of like top player versus top player. So yeah, but I would say, yeah, the Grizzlies and Thunder should be up there, but I would say Grizzlies should be number 2 overall.
So we all agreed that there's one team in the elite category, and that is the Orlando Magic. They drafted Paolo last year and had a spectacular rookie year, and really kind of helped turn this team around. And this team is definitely a playoff team this year, with the addition of Franz Wagner, who's been getting better and better each of the last, I think, 3 years. I just really like what the Magic is doing here. And then they also have, let's see, Jalen Suggs that they drafted, I think, 2 years ago. And then we put Wendell Carter Jr. as their fourth guy, who also still gets a lot of decent minutes.
I feel like all of those players on that roster are like pretty good too. Like you can pick and choose whoever you want. They're all kind of on the same level. Besides, like obviously Paolo's like number 1 guy, and then number 2 maybe France. But other than that, once you get to third, it's like any given night.
I feel like, and I mean, at this point, we're gonna get into where we kind of compare different teams, and we can talk about the Rockets a little bit later. But I think the Rockets and them are very similar in an aspect where they have a very good number 1 guy, and then maybe I think the Magic probably have a little bit more of a solidified number 2 in Franz, but both the teams are pretty deep in their depth, which I don't think a lot of teams have in these 2 tiers in between. Good and elite. I think you either have really good top end talent or a lot of depth, and I think they have a good combination of both. But I think, like you were saying, a lot of their guys, especially their guards, and maybe one big in Wendell, they're very, I think, high floor guys. I think if you were to go into the next 5 years with any of them, they would give you a good floor to what they can be. But I just don't see a lot of ceiling in them, which is kind of the one thing that holds them back for me.
What do you guys? So the thing that is always setting the Orlando Magic like down is the fact that they don't have a point guard. What do you guys think about Anthony Black? I think. I mean, he has the height, and he's supposed to be a passing guard, and I don't know.
I think he has the potential to be better than. I think he has the potential to be the best guard on the team. It's just so early right now that we don't know, but we also have to factor in that he was a top 6 pick, right? Was he 6?
I think he was
like 8th or 7th or something like
8th
that.
Yeah, I mean, he was top 10. He's a top 10 pick, so obviously they drafted him to be a future starter, probably at minimum. So I think he has the chance to be, but I guess we'll just kind of have to see. But I do think defensively and height-wise, he has some advantages there. Obviously, they got a clean reset at the guard position drafting him. But yeah, I'm not sure about him.
Yeah. I don't really have any ideas besides like, I don't know.
But I mean,
And
obviously,
for some reason, this team is taller than average. Am I
Yeah, it's a
wrong?
very tall
Yeah.
team.
Like
Yeah, very
this.
tall. Yeah. Um, and so, I think overall, I mean, and yeah, that's one thing that helps them a lot. But I think overall, it's probably that top end guy who puts them in that elite core, as well as having other guys to help them. I just think they need, if they had a point guard that was, that borderline star kind of point guard that we can see now, they'd probably be in the dynasty, point. If they had a shy, they'd be easily in dynasty. But they don't. I just don't see a lot of ceiling in their guards right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have Cole Anthony that could count in this as well. But the Magic haven't really viewed him really as their main point guard, considering that he's played in 65, which I think is every single game that the Magic have had this year, and has started 0 games. Yet he's still getting more minutes than Anthony Black per game. But Anthony Black has started 33 of the 60 games that he's played in. So, um,
How
yeah.
you know what's crazy about this too though? Like the fact that they were able to recover, even having like drafted Markelle Fultz. Like they drafted a bust, yet we're still putting him at elite core, even though one
They
of their
didn't draft
former like
They didn't draft him. They traded for him.
they traded
Yeah.
they traded for him, but who did they trade for him? I know they traded. It was kind of an important trade.
Wasn't much, but I would say as of right now, just going based off of where they drafted him, Jalen Suggs was probably a bust comparative to where they picked him at. I would say that's fair to say, because he's a good defensive player, and he's a good, he'll give you a nice solid 13, 4, and 2, but that's not a guy you draft in the top 5, or 6,
Yeah,
something
around
like that.
there.
Yeah, so I think that would be more of the bust kind of guy. So your point is still true. They just have terrible luck with guards, I feel like.
Do you think this is it for Markelle?
What do you mean it?
Like, I don't see him sticking with the Orlando Magic, but I don't know if he yeah.
Like him on the team? Yeah. He's probably done on the
Yeah.
Magic, but he'll land on his feet somewhere else. He's a good enough player. Like I said, he's just kind of like that average role-playing starter that you just kind of put out there for a 9-10 seed. Like if he was on like the Lakers as the starting point guard, he'd be playing fine. He'd be fine. He's not as good as like D'Lo offensively, but he's a decent all-around player who's going to be able to keep you afloat or come off the bench and be a good little point guard. But yeah, if they could, I think they're going to need to draft. Maybe they did Anthony Black, but they're going to need to draft or trade for a point guard. I think that's all we really need to say on the Magic.
Yep. The next team, we only agreed on one team that goes in the core, or the good core, and that is the Charlotte Hornets. A team that needs a little bit more than what they have, but has a good start with LaMelo Ball. So who wants to spearhead this one?
I only put them in goal. I only put them in good core because LaMelo Ball is a very promising point guard, and Brandon Miller is kind of struggling like I expected him to. But you're seeing flashes of what he can do, and he's a good complement. I think. Who was the third guy we decided to list as the
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams?
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say that I didn't really put them into the good core because of Mark Williams. It was mostly LaMelo Ball, and I like Brandon Miller.
Yeah, I think ultimately whether they're a good core or a solid pieces kind of core, I think it depends on Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, how you feel about them. I do think you're slightly incorrect on Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller's been playing fine. It's just the team isn't very good, so it's kind of hard to see the kind of impact he makes when they're losing a bunch of games. But production-wise, he's been up there. I think he's averaged like 20 or 21 in the last 9 games or something like that. So he's been playing well, but in LaMelo Ball, I think that the outlook on him would be a lot different if he could stay healthy, but it's just, with the third year in a row having injuries in and out of the season and being in and out of lineups, it's hard to trust him. And so when you can't trust a guy to be the best player on your team as a core, it kind of drops you a whole tier or two.
When I when I
So
when I said consistency, it was more of like he's not like not like he was struggling, more of just consistency. Like most rookies, they can't sustain this level of performance for long, but when his level of performance like when he does do well, it's showing flashes that he could be an all-star.
yeah,
But it's just not in and day out. But he's a rookie, so I don't really
yeah,
expect that.
you're right. It's every rookie. But yeah, I mean, if LaMelo Ball could be healthy for a whole season, I think we'd look at this team a little bit differently. Maybe they'd be in the play-in run, but they're not, and he's not healthy. So this is where they are.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks that Brandon Miller's development has been stunted, considering that the person that's the best player on his team has only played 22 games this year. He's only gotten to play 20 games with LaMelo this year, and it's kind of hard, especially when he's the point guard and distributing the ball, and probably one you could say maybe one of the best in the league that can distribute the ball. Especially that rookie year was really fun to watch, but I mean, this is the kind of season I was expecting Brandon Miller to have. But the fact that he's doing that without LaMelo playing says that like he's got some room to grow, and
But
that's the only reason I didn't put them in solid pieces.
I think he can still grow. Because I feel like the move from Terry Rozier was amazing because you don't need a player like Terry Rozier on that team when you're trying to develop your two guys. And plus, didn't they just bring in Kyle Lowry? I feel like that's a really good player to have alongside like a rookie who's like actively trying to improve.
I don't necessarily, and yeah, Kyle Lowry is on the Hornets. I don't necessarily agree that they couldn't use Terry Rozier or that Lowry doesn't help them because I think both guys help them. I don't really think as a rookie with Brandon Miller and as LaMelo as a third year guy that's shown that he can be an all-star type of player, whether there's guys around him or not. I don't think we really need to be focusing too much on development. The thing that I worry about at this point is Steve Clifford and how he's going to carry the development into the future. If he is their coach in 2 years and Brandon Miller is kind of looking like the same player in year 3 and LaMelo Ball is not really a winning player, so to speak, then I think we can point some fingers at him. But with guys kind of just trying to get their feet wet right now, with Brandon Miller, and we haven't really even talked about Mark Williams, and he's been hurt a lot of the time. But I just think they need to keep working. But we've seen flashes, and I think that's all you can really ask for out of a good core.
So now moving on to the 3 teams that we agreed that are just have solid pieces. Even though someone may disagree just a little bit with some of this. We have first, we'll talk about the Washington Wizards. Go ahead, Gage.
What do you mean? Go ahead. I didn't put them there.
No, say your piece.
No. I want you guys. I didn't put them there. You guys put them there. So go ahead. Explain.
Yeah, I'll spearhead this one. I think that they have enough okay pieces where they can feel okay about themselves going into a rebuild. I think we've talked about it before, and I don't need to say too much about it, but they've done a really bad job collecting assets, drafting well, being a good front office. And even at that point, I still think they have 3 guys that are solid young players that you can say, okay, these may not be the guys when we're done with the rebuild, but it's some guys that might show us something in the next few years where we can feel good about them. I think Bilal Coulibaly, they just drafted him last year. He's got to be a good project player if they can develop him right, which I don't have a lot of faith they can do, but if they can do it, he could be a player. Denny Avdia has been playing well in the second half of the season, getting a lot of production out of him. Obviously, not a lot of winning, but they're getting some production out of him. And then obviously Jordan Poole is that third guy who, with the contract, it's really tough to kind of feel good about him. But at the same time, he did just win a championship with the Warriors, and I think for him, it's going to have to be a thing where he plays a very niche role, and they've been bringing him off the bench, and he looks a lot better. And obviously, the contract doesn't look very good, but if they can get kind of other guys in here, like if they're obviously they're going to get a good top pick this year, they're going to get a good top pick next year. If they can get a kind of Magic Foundation draft in the next year or two, and then have that Jordan Poole that the Magic are kind of looking for right now be that guy, then I think there's a future where he can still be a good young piece. And so with those guys, I think there is something to be positive about. So I don't think you can put him any lower than having solid pieces.
I mean, you consider Jordan Poole. I think Jordan Poole's value is gonna keep tanking. I don't think he's that guy, and I think he played well, like in the Golden State system. I think that Golden State system was just very, it was a perfect place for him. And Tyus Jones is gone, and I mean, I guess you have Kyle Kuzma. I really don't consider like Jordan Poole a plus. Like, I think Tyus Jones is a much better player than Jordan Poole. And it just feels like this team is a bunch of like hand-me-downs. Like, a lot of people they collected, a good cast of them, and now this might not be the people you listed, but a good cast of them were like just traded down for just like not really, just traded away to the Washington Wizards. And it's not even clear who is supposed to be the guy. Is it Kyle Kuzma? Are you going to build a team around Kyle Kuzma? Are you going to build a team around Jordan Poole? Yeah, they're solid pieces.
Well, we're not talking about those guys, though, specifically. Jordan Poole, yes, but remember the other two guys I mentioned.
It was Denny
and Bilal Coulibaly.
I'm not excited about Bilal. At least not yet. I can't put him as a solid piece yet. Denny, sure. But Denny is a solid piece because the Wizards honestly kind of position him in that way. Because it was crowded. It could have been Rui. You could have just kept Rui or Denny. Choose your pick. They just chose with Rui. If they would have traded away Denny, then Rui would have been probably this same position. But why did they decide Rui wasn't the guy? I don't know. Ask them. I just don't see. To me, I think Denny is half a step higher than Rui Hachimura or something like that, and that's not saying a lot. That's just me.
All right, Sam, go ahead so we can wrap this one up in a second.
I don't really have much to say on the Wizards. I think PTU hit a lot of it. Jordan Poole, he's not super efficient by any means, but I think
he's one of the worst.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think him and Denny are what you can classify as maybe not solid pieces, but like not even, I don't know, for lack of a better term, it's just solid pieces.
But it's
they have
the definition.
They have a lot to go.
I think Jordan Poole is one of those guys that like he's like a Miami Heat player that you pull out of G League and they just work in your system. That's what I think. I think if you took Jordan Poole or had what's his name, who was basically almost rookie of the year like 2 years back with the Miami Heat, who's not even Kendrick Nunn. That's the kind of player you're with, like player you're getting. I feel like if you swap Kendrick Nunn in with Jordan Poole, I don't know. It's starting to seem like he's one of those guys.
Yeah, I can understand that with Jordan Poole. I think with Denny, he's kind of the definition of a solid piece. And with Bilal, I can understand if you weren't excited about him. And I'm not, particularly excited about him either. I just think that there is a world where he can be a good player, and I'm not saying he's going to be a top 2, top 3 go-to guy, but if he can be part of a good young core, and then you get guys in here that in the next couple drafts are good, then he can be that guy.
So for the next team, we have the Chicago Bulls. So with this, we have, Kobe White, Io, and then we put, I think, Patrick Williams was the third guy.
Yeah, and you could probably put this team over the
Or
Wizards as well.
Dalen Terry is the third
Terry.
guy. Patrick Williams is not on contract.
And he sucks.
Yeah. So true. Yeah.
When you said Patrick Williams, I was about to stop, and then
he sucks.
I was like, you can't.
I hated that pick. I hated that pick the first year they took him, and he was. Can you believe at this point he was the 4th overall pick in that 2018 draft? 2019, 2018? Yeah, top. He was number 4. Can't. No.
Yeah, that's insane. But yes, I do like this backcourt of Kobe White with Ao. Kobe White being everyday starter. He started every single game that he's played in this year and playing very efficient. I like him stepping into that role, and Lonzo, maybe he plays next year. I don't know, but I do like this. But the only reason that I didn't put him in good is because I think that Lonzo's taken his job back. And I also think that Kobe White might be on the trade market this offseason for a team that might want to go out and get a new point.
I think this one is a big recency bias because Kobe White was basically, here you're naming players that the Bulls didn't even want on their roster like a year ago. Like if they had Lonzo Ball, we wouldn't be talking about Ao. We wouldn't be talking about Kobe White. Those two players would just basically be off the roster at this point. So for you guys to say like, this is a good, solid piece core, yeah, it's too soon to say for Kobe White. He might have revived his career this year. Ao has peaked out. I think Ao is just this kind of player who's like a second tier Alex Caruso.
That's crazy, dude. Excuse my language. That's crazy. What do you mean he's peaked out? How old do you think he is?
Isn't he like 22?
I 22.
don't. What
No,
does he have the tool? Yeah, like this is the kind of player Ao is. I think he's done this last couple seasons. Has he really improved?
Here's the thing. Here's what I have a big problem with what you're saying. Is that you're saying that if they never got the opportunity, then they wouldn't be these guys. And I agree with you, but what does that really have to do with the type of players they are? Like that's like saying that what's another player that on a bench that's pretty good but he just doesn't get opportunity. Like that happens all the time. And especially when you're a young player, you're not going to get all the opportunity to be the guy right away. And of course, Kobe White had a rough couple seasons, but so do half the other young players in the NBA. It takes time sometimes. It's not, sometimes you don't know if a guy's going to be that good his first year or second year. Sometimes it takes a third year, and I think this is Kobe White's third year. So sometimes it just takes a little while. It might be his 4th, but he's up for most improved player. I think if you were to look at his stats, he'd be putting up really good stats right now. And they're in the thick of the play-in right now with Kobe White, Ao, DeMar, and a washed-out Vucevic. So, I think they have some pieces that obviously they're not a good core. They have a lot of work to do. They have to put together some drafts and free agency. But I think I disagree with you, Sam. I don't think they're going to want to trade Kobe White in the offseason. I think they're going to see what he is right now. If he doesn't continue this, then fine. They can keep just rebuilding what they're going to rebuild anyways. But if he is this, then that's a great start to have to your rebuild with a point guard that is this good right now. Because let me check his age. Ao is 24. So if you believe that he isn't going to get any better, then I can understand that. But and Kobe White is 24 as well. So, I think if you think that neither one is going to be that much better than they are right now, I think that's fine. But I think both of them have proven to be guys that can give you 19 or 18 and 7 or 5 and 4. Very, very good, solid pieces. Not saying
I
upside
think
starters, but they're solid starters that can win games.
I think despite Kobe White's like growth, I would rather take AO. Like if you were to give me both the choices, I would rather take AO. Because Kobe White's, his play is very particular, and this is why the Bulls initially wanted. Kobe White has always been Kobe White has always been like capable of this, but he hasn't been able to like pull it off. But he can push offenses. He pushes offenses better than most point guards in the league. I think that's just part of his game. He can finish fast breaks. He can start fast breaks. But how many teams really want to start, pushing? He could be good for the Lakers. I just think sure, I can buy that AO is a solid piece. I think AO is capped out. I think, I guess it depends on how we're defining our solid pieces. I think, like I said about like Jordan Poole, he's just a particular type of player. I just think, and it's just like I don't really care if you want to build a winning core around that. Sure, go ahead and try to build a winning core around a play style that fits like Kobe White's kind of play. I don't know if that's gonna work.
All right. So moving away from the Bulls now, we'll get on to the last team that we all agree on, and that is the Golden State Warriors. This one is it makes sense that they're here at the bottom because like they already had what we defined with our qualifications, a young core, but obviously that was like 10 years ago. So they're very front heavy, kind of like old, along with the Clippers and Bucks, but they do have some players that, if they were to try to build around, they maybe could try, but you got Jonathan Kuminga, Bodzimski, Jackson Davis, and Moses Moody. So, Gage, I know that you didn't like putting them in here in solid pieces either.
It's basically like a lower tier. You know how we were talking about like, man, how do I decide where to put a core if you have like one good player like Trae Young or something, and the rest of them are just kind of like Jalen Johnson. I mean, the fact that like who's the best player in that group? Jonathan Kuminga, and I think almost like arguably by a mile. I honestly, in some nights, he looks like a better player than Draymond Green. It's just that core is just not strong. That's just all it is. It's just Jonathan Kuminga and then some guys that they're trying out. Moses is okay. I'm not gonna be that mean, but Moses is okay. But
I mean, have you been watching the games? Podajemski's, been playing a good
I
amount of
haven't
time
seen
for like the last
Podajemski.
30, 40 games. He plays a lot of minutes. I mean, if we had to look up his stats, I mean,
I'll look it up right
is that
now.
what you're
I
doing
got
right
it pulled
now?
up. Yep. So he's played in 57 games. He started 22, plays 27 minutes, off of 8.5 shots a game, scores 9.7 points, gets 5.8 rebounds as a guard, and 4 assists.
And shoots 37% from three.
Sounds
Isn't
like
bad.
a pretty good player as a rookie.
That was also taken in a later pick.
And why does this make them? If we're ranking these cores, why does he push them over? Say, like into like maybe the good core or something like that.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why we have him at solid pieces.
You think, okay, Brandon, he's a solid piece. Is it for the? So are we saying for the future, or are we saying like just like as of right now, what's going on?
Solid piece for the future. Yeah, both.
For the future, sure. But as of right now, I don't know.
I mean, he's playing 27 minutes a game on on a team that's in the play-in race, I don't really know what more you want from him at this point as a rookie. Like if you were to look at the rookies right now in the NBA, besides the top 5 rookies, and even I would say more than that, even the top 3, because Amen and Asar don't get as many minutes as they should. He's playing the most minutes out of those guys with probably better per 36 minutes than 95% of the rookies, and he was picked at 20. So I just don't know why you're so low on him comparative to like when we're going to talk about guys later, like he's pretty good. And John Kuminga's, I think if their team was better, he would have a pretty good case at most improved player as well. So I think those two
I
guys
think part of
alone
it is
have
his
some
age.
room.
His age too. You're comparing him against like what? How old is Amen?
21.
He's 21 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm being too rough then, but I don't know. I guess it might be because the Warriors are just. I feel like if the Warriors did have a good young core to back them up, they wouldn't actually be in the play, and I think they'd be a much better team. And I think Kuminga doing his role is proof of that. I don't think that they are in the play-in without Kuminga picking up the slack when Draymond Green has been injured like this season. So
you'd agree with solid pieces.
Yeah, sure. You've convinced me.
Yeah. I think you were just too low on pods. I don't think you saw enough of his game.
No, it must have been like I don't know if was he playing like this all season?
Yeah.
Okay. It must be like the low.
It's a Jaime Jaquez type of situation where he came in at 21 and it was good, but he's younger than Jaime Jaquez.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Jaime's on a different rookie level right now, but that's just Jaime.
That's just his age, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then that wraps up all the teams that we agreed on. Now this is where I guess the debate kind of comes more into effect. So the next team we're going to talk about is in between that good and solid pieces, and that is the Toronto Raptors. With you obviously have Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Grady Dick. So 2 of us, I think, put them in, I think, the good category, and then someone put them in the solid pieces. So who would like to go first?
What I put him, I might have put him higher, but because I didn't agree with that core you put together. I really think it should be Emmanuel Quickley instead of Grady.
See, and that would work. But Emmanuel Quickley is not on roster for next season. So he, I believe, is actually also an unrestricted free agent.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he would have obviously been in there, and that would have been a really good 4, and that would have been, a good opportunity to make that debate instead of good and solid to elite and good. But unfortunately, he is not on roster.
I think having Scotty Barnes already puts you in a good conversation.
I think
and
so.
And then combine that with RJ Barrett, who has clearly shined in this new role. I mean, I feel like he has always had to defer as a second option, and the Knicks have always tried to push him as a second option. They initially gave him a few seconds to be first option, and then they just went ahead and signed. They kind of squished him down with Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and it's arguably you would think that would work, right? You would think that having RJ Barrett as that next guy would be pretty good team, but ultimately they ended up switching for OG Anunoby. But I think the Toronto Raptors still don't really have a bad core. I would have liked them to keep OG, but it's still fine. RJ Barrett's good, and Scotty Barnes is good, and Grady is wishy-washy, but maybe you chalk that up as.
I mean, once you give him minutes, he's been playing fairly well the last 20-some games.
Yeah, maybe you chalk that up as just getting playtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think, like Gage said, if you have Scotty, that automatically puts you at the good core position. I don't think having RJ and Grady will take you to that elite, but I would say it definitely puts him at that kind of top good core area where it's really hard to put them any lower than, probably second or first in this tier. I think a better question, it's hard to say because I think Brandon Miller's a much, I think he has a much higher ceiling than RJ Barrett. It's hard to go with that proven talent that RJ Barrett has right now. And then I think LaMelo Ball can be better than Scotty Barnes, but he hasn't been healthy, so it's hard to say.
Yeah. So then, Gage, you think the Raptors should go in the good then? Or are you still going with solid pieces?
I'm going with good.
Yeah,
Good?
I think that's a good spot.
All right, yeah. Then I like the pun right there. So all right. Yeah, and I don't really have much to add on to the Raptors. You guys hit all the talking points. Scotty already gets you into that good position, and RJ Barrett and Grady Dick do enough for you to not bump you down. So I like putting them there. The next one is kind of a weird situation. Some of us put the Portland Trailblazers in solid pieces, and someone went elite. So who put him as elite?
I think I did, but it was one of those things where I could understand if they were just a good core as well. I think it ultimately just depends on what you think of their top guard talent. Do you think they're going to be, a future top 3, top 4 backcourt, or do you think they're going to be more so maybe the 8th best backcourt? Do you really think Scoot is going to be that good or not? Do you think Shaden will be healthy enough to show how good he is? Maybe. And I also factor in that obviously Simons will be on the roster, so I don't see him as a long-term guy, but it's something you have to factor in. Ayton, obviously a former #1 draft pick, he's on the roster. So they kind of have a good blend of guys that are already pretty good that are under 25 and guys in the future that could be really good as well. So I think either way, they're at minimum a good core, but I think there is a world where if you think they're going to be good enough, they can be an elite core.
I think it's crazy how it's kind of crazy how this team is that bad. Like you just named off a lot of good players who I would like to have. Simons,
And Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy Grant. I mean, Jeremy Grant is slowly turning into more of a me player because he's always contract hunting, but that's a different story.
Well, you got it last year, but yeah.
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 But I just think you just named that core is good. It's good
Right.
core, but it honestly it's borderline elite. But why do they lose?
Coaching,
Health.
I think. Coaching,
Coaching?
That
and
too.
I just think there's a little bit misdirection with where the team is at because when you have guys that are more so ready to win and then you have guys that are not ready to win like Shaden and Scoot, it kind of is a weird in between, and that's never a good thing for your identity, kind of an identity crisis a little bit. So,
Yeah, it's weird. You kind of I mean, Simons is doing his best Damian Lillard impression, and
yeah.
they're still losing. But I mean,
Yeah.
when Dame was there, I guess they were losing too. But I mean, it looked like purposeful. I don't know. It might still be purposeful. I feel like this Blazers team is a lot better than how they're playing.
That could be fair. So that would be a reason to put them in elite.
That would be a reason, but it's borderline, the fact that
It's borderline.
Yeah, honestly, I can see them as elite, but it's weird, right? Because they're elite, but they're not playing like it. But I think they're elite. They all have shown that they're capable of except Scoot. Scoot still needs a little bit more time, but Ayton has shown that he can do it. Simons has. He's been
Shaden
chilling.
has at times.
They've all shown glimpses, that they could be the best player on a given night.
Yeah.
But it doesn't translate to wins yet, just because everything else isn't going the way. Whether it's coaching, just team philosophy, other people not having or carrying their weight. It's just that's why I kind of just thought it was solid pieces, but it was more of that like bottom like good core solid pieces for me. But I mean, I'm okay with putting them in good core. I haven't seen enough to say elite like the Magic have shown. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's fair because with the Blazers, if you think they're going to be an elite core, you really have to be sure that that young backcourt is going to be really good. And so, yeah, I can understand that. I mean, one team in that group is proven and one team isn't, So I think it's fair.
So are you good
Super
with the
weird
good core?
case. Yeah, maybe it's Chauncey. I like Chauncey though. Out of
I
all
mean,
the coaches in the NBA, he's the second best player. So
yeah.
he might have. I don't know. I think he would have known. He's respected. Like, it's Chauncey.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So the next three teams, also kind of unique situations. Someone put them in solid pieces, someone put them in good, and someone put them in elite. So first, let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. So first off, let's start with the guy that went with elite. Let's see, who was that?
You?
Gage, probably. Or you, yeah.
Oh shoot, it was. Okay.
Because I shared in it.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay. So, as much as I like to knock on him, Victor Wembanyama is, a generational type talent player. I also am pretty big on Devin Vassell, and I also do like Keldon Johnson. Now, obviously, there's Jeremy Shohan as well, and that's like their four biggest pieces right now. Getting their top four in scoring for their team. Only thing holding them back is having that point guard. They got Trey Jones, who's I think a little bit older. But yeah, it's just having if we're saying having Scotty can put you in that good category, I feel like saying that you have Victor, especially with how he has been playing. Now he has been a little inconsistent, but as of late he's been playing fairly well. At that expectation of what we were expecting this year. If Scotty can automatically put the Raptors in good, I feel like Victor puts you at the top of good. And I feel like Devin Vassell and Keldon show enough promise that they can maybe move into that elite category. But simultaneously, if we're talking about the Blazers and we're seeing the Magic have the success and Blazers aren't, I feel like probably moving the Spurs down to good is probably where I'm standing now that I'm kind of seeing the board as it's going. So I put him as elite, but I think with how it's going, I think good is where we should go.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I think I agree with that as well. Yeah, I can't put him. It's just when we're going to talk about the Mavericks and the Hawks later, but when you just have one guy that's really good or a really good prospect, because Victor's obviously going to be a good player, but he isn't that complete player yet. So when you have that one guy as a good prospect, it's hard to just have him be the guy that takes you to elite. So, and I'm not really big on Keldon Johnson. I think Devin Vassell is a good player, but I think he's a good starter. I don't think he's going to be anything like an all-star or anything like that, but he's a good starter. I think Keldon Johnson's fine. Shohan is fine. I just think they have a lot of fine guys, and Victor's going to be a superstar, and so I don't think that's enough to be a good core or an elite core. It's a good core. You have a good foundation, but that's about it.
I think this is why I didn't rank them so high. They're all good players, but this core was docked because it's not a good fit. And I feel like we are in one of those alternate realities where somehow the Spurs have missed out on pairing Victor Wembanyama with a decent passer. I feel like these guys, aren't the best passers that you could have next to Victor, and I mean, no wonder why you have Trey Jones is getting so many more minutes just because now he's been one of the only guys that have proven who can play alongside Victor Wembanyama and not look so frustrated and be able to give him those open looks. Imagine if you paired Victor Wembanyama with a guy with Trey Young's mentality. I mean, if you've seen Trey Young, we'll get to him in a bit, but if you've seen Trey Young can make power forwards and centers look much better than they actually are. I just we're in this alternate universe where somehow we weren't able to pair up Victor Wembanyama with a decent passer, and that's why their core gets knocked down. Not because they're bad players. A lot of teams would love to have a player like Vassell. And they're all coached by Pop. They all know when to buckle down on defense when they historically Pop can coach those kind of players, but it's tough. It's just not the team. Not the core for Victor.
Yeah.
Okay, so then where are we thinking for them?
I think good core.
Good?
That's where I would put him at.
Yeah.
I will say this: if they had Trey Young, then it would be probably a dynasty core, because he's the type of player that would elevate the team and Victor. So.
And that's terrifying. That's really terrifying.
Yeah.
The next team that's in that solid, good, elite category is the Miami Heat. So one of us went with elite there, which is, that one was Gage. Elite?
I think so. I mean, I like Jaime. And I like Tyler Herro. Gosh, give me the core real quick. I need to recall what did we list as the core?
Herro, Jaime, Jovic, and I believe Orlando Robinson.
Yeah.
Let's bump that down. I must have. That must be a misclick. That must be a misclick.
I mean,
that's not enough.
I would put them at the bottom of good core, honestly. I think, because I don't see any of those guys being a star someday. The closest guy is Tyler Herro, but even then, I don't see him being a guy that's gonna be better than LaMelo Ball or Scotty Barnes or Scoot or Shaden or Victor. They're on the very bottom of that at that point, and they got, but that's fine because that's not who the Heat are trying to be. They're not one of those teams that are trying to build a young core. But the thing is they have enough solid young guys that we have to put them at least good core because they've proven to be good on a good team. So yeah, I mean, I'd put him at the bottom of good core, honestly.
I can put that. I can deal with that. That had to be a misclick. I was like, what am I thinking?
When you heard Orlando Robinson, you're like, oh man. Misclick for
sure. Not even Duncan.
Yeah. I saw Robinson and I thought it was the other guy.
Right.
Not even.
So yeah, all that I have to say about this is, when I was looking at, putting teams in good core, if you don't have your top guy in this, which would be Tyler Herro, for example, if that top guy in this young core isn't the second best player on the team, at least, then it's hard for me to see putting that in a good core.
I mean, you have to make some exceptions, right? Because the Miami Heat were just in the NBA Finals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'd be a very if they had one more guy of Tyler Herro's level, then maybe I would. Of level of potential, I should say. Because I think Jaime Hawkins is really good. I just don't know how much better he's gonna get.
Because he's an older guy.
He's an older guy, and the way that he plays is very fundamental, very I don't know, just not many things he can get better at. I mean, he can always shoot better percentages, but he's already shooting a really good percentage. He's already really strong. He's not the fastest guy on the court. He's not the most bouncy guy, even though he can jump. So I just, I don't think there's anything that's super potentially popping for me. Whereas Tyler Hero
Makes
can
sense.
get a lot more scoring and defensively, um, you know, skilled.
So then we'll put the Miami Heat in the good category. And then the last one of the solid, good, elite, we have the Detroit Pistons. So I think PT, we all went with the elite on one of these, and I think it's your turn. So go ahead
Yeah.
and tell us why elite.
He needs to chill out. And this dude is Duran's #1 fan.
I love Jalen Duren.
If you speak one piece of dirt on Jalen Duran, you're gonna hear it for the next 10 minutes.
Wait, what?
The last time I brought up Duran's name in a bad way, I heard it for the next 10 minutes.
Heard it
You
from
just
who, me?
drilled me. Yeah, from you.
Yeah, dude, Jalen Duren is super good. If Jalen Duren was on the Lakers or if he was on the Heat, everybody would think he's a top 10 center in the league. I promise. Because he puts up the kind of production where it's eye popping. I have him in fantasy. I've been following him since he got drafted last year. He's a really good player. He's really good. But he's on a terrible team with guards that are inefficient, that don't really feed him the ball, and he still ends up with 20 and 20s with 5 block games. I mean, his stats are incredible. I think that,
you know who also ended up with 20 and 20 on the Detroit Pistons?
who's that?
Andre Drummond.
Andre Drummond.
And that's not a terrible comp. Because I mean, when he did that, pretty sure he was an all-star that year. So that's a really good player. The difference is, I think, is Jalen Duren's a lot more athletic as far as like speed, lateral quickness. So he's gonna be able to be more of that roamer that can be shot blocking, and I worry about his outside shot creating a little bit as far as like from 8 feet and out. I think he's gonna have a nice soft touch for hooks, but he's very strong, so he's just gonna get stronger. I mean, honestly, you might have hit the nail on the head. Andre Drummond might be a great comp for him. And Andre Drummond was a good player for 4 or 5 years, and if that's all he becomes, hey, I mean that is what it is. But
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
It's also a guy like Clint Capella where he's going to be a great shot blocker, a great lob threat. He's going to be a great rebounder for a long time, and he can get his fair share of points and free throws and be a solid contributor to a winning team. I'm not saying he's going to be some kind of star, all-star every year kind of guy. But also when you have guys like Cade who were drafted, he was drafted #1. And I think he's had injury stuff kind of bother him, but lately, ever since All-Star break, he's been playing really well. They're winning a few games here and there. I just think that Monty is terrible. They don't have vets. I think basically everything around the young core is letting them down. I think the coaching is letting them down. I think the GM is letting them down. I think the vets are letting them down. The lack of vets are letting them down. I think Asar Thompson can be a really good, impactful young player. I think Jaden Ivey can be good if he has the mentor to teach him how to play better basketball, but they don't have those things right now. So they're kind of just trying to do the Rockets Silas thing where they're just trying to like learn by failure, and that's just not really how it works in the NBA. It's not really like organic learning like you can sometimes in the NFL at a certain position, or you can in high school basketball. It's not like that because, and I heard this one quote the other day, just because you've been a bad team for a long time doesn't automatically give you the pass to be good one random year or at some point be good. You got to build that up with culture, with coaching, with front office, with veterans. You can't just be good all of a sudden because you have a bunch of high draft picks. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of, letting these young guys down, and I think at some point they're going to start giving up on them because they don't have another choice, but that's why Detroit's been so bad for running on 15 years now.
I don't even think that this Detroit Pistons is the best young core in the last 10 years. That's how bad the Detroit Pistons have been. And that's how I have to pull down this core because I like the only person. Here's the reason. Like, Sam, you can tell me what I put him as. I gave him a thumbs up because of Cade Cunningham and who else? Well, what was the core? Say the core again.
Jalen Duren, Cade, Asar, and Ivy.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it. I actually, I remember. Yeah, I gave them a good thumbs up because all of them are pretty good. Yeah, but they're just. I don't know. They're all good, pretty solid pieces. What did I put them good?
So
Yeah, you put 'em
basically,
as
what you're
solid
telling
pieces.
me,
I put them at solid. I'll put them at good because I'd rather have that
I
core
think that's
than
fair.
what the Miami Heat have right now.
Correct. I agree, and I think that's about right.
But like again, this Detroit Pistons team. I was thinking when we brought up Andre Drummond, which
Uh huh.
one interesting conversation would be would Andre Drummond ever get his jersey retired in Detroit? That's spicy. I'm probably not with the Detroit Bad Boys, but
No.
but listen to this young core. Listen to this young core.
All right.
You have Andre Drummond as a rookie. You have Chris Middleton. You have Greg Monroe. You have who is Brandon Knight. I honestly, and maybe Rodney Stuckey. I honestly think that core is comparable to the core they have right now. That's just, I don't know. That's It's very comparable. It's pretty spicy, but I don't know.
I
So
mean,
I put.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you
No,
go ahead.
I was gonna go off on a tangent.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I put him as a good core. I like everything that you said, PT. Everything else surrounding them, you could say is the problem. If they were gonna finish with 22 wins this year, 23, we'll say 23, a 23-59 record this year, I would have said that's enough to put them in elite. But they're at 12, tied for the worst record in the league. So it's hard to see that, and that's also, the Wizards, in this board is in a fairly comparable spot, yet they have the same record. And we'd be saying that they are, 2 levels ahead of the Wizards.
Because I don't think the Wizards have as much hope.
I don't think
Like,
they have
I
the
think it's
ceiling
more of a-
that any
it's-
of the guys have.
Yeah.
That we said.
And I agree with that. But like, just looking at the team, at what the record is saying right now, and both of these teams are young core dominated, especially since Bojan is gone from the Pistons. It's just hard to see that. But I do like them at good, and I think that we're all in agreement that it can go there.
Yeah, definitely.
I
yeah,
honestly think at this point it's a Detroit problem.
Yeah, I think so too,
Yeah.
honestly. And when I was voting on them, I think I might have gone a little bit too high just because I think each one of those guys has potential to be top 12 at their position. I really do. I think all those guys could be there. Obviously that's not going to happen, but I think when you look at these other cores, I just don't really feel the same way about certain other guys. But at the end of the day, we're also going based off of the development and the potential of that development hitting. And in Detroit, it's just not as good as somewhere like San Antonio or Miami or even Portland for that matter. Charlotte's a little iffy, but
So
anyways.
they get docked for just being Detroit and not Spurs.
Well, no, not Detroit, but being around that kind of stagnant front office and coaching staff, because with San Antonio you're getting Pop, with Heat you're getting why am I blanking on his name?
Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, Spoelstra. You're getting
Or
Spoelstra.
even what's his name? The actual GM.
Yeah, you're getting Pat Riley,
Pat Riley too.
Yeah, so with Portland, okay, you can knock that. With Charlotte, Steve Clifford, but at least those other teams have that kind of infrastructure. They got structure around their kind of building. But anyways, we should probably move on. We got, was this 7 more teams to talk about?
Yep. The next team, or these next 6 teams we're going to talk about, is in between that good and elite category that we were kind of deciding. The first team we'll do is the New Orleans Pelicans. Gage, Zion's elite?
Zion is elite. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Zion is a great piece. Name me off the
who else
core
is
again.
elite?
Name me off the core. Who do we decide the core was?
So the core was Zion, Trey Murphy III, Herb Jones, and Jordan Hawkins.
Oh yeah, that's elite. That is elite. You have two great
No.
defenders behind Zion. Honestly, it's very surprising how they're not this threatening. What is it, because of injuries that the Pelicans haven't showed up? Probably.
Yeah.
And are you gonna dock Zion just?
Yes.
I mean, you can dock this core for being injured, but you can't knock those other two guys you just named. I think that's I remember now. That's one of I did not misclick there. I did not misclick. Go ahead.
I completely disagree. I think when you're looking at these guys, number one, we're comparing this to either the Magic and the good cores, right? So talking about as a number one option, Zion has been really good, but just like LaMelo Ball, he's constantly hurt. Now he's been okay this season, but production-wise this season, he's not been good. He's not been good production-wise this season. He hasn't been like he was a couple seasons ago. And then on top of that, when you look at their second and third guy, which is probably Trey Murphy and then Herb Jones, those guys are very high functional starting players, but none of those guys aren't going to be stars.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. It matters a lot.
They don't have to be those guys. They do the dirty work and they do it well, and they're very good defenders. You take one of those guys, half of your wings. Your wing defense is solved. Just choose one of them, and they have two.
That's fine, but that doesn't mean that the other. Okay, so let's compare it to the Blazers. Okay, let's compare it to them. So when you have, let's say, and we're just talking about those two guys. We're not talking about Zion, right? We're just talking about the Blazers. When you have the potential to be a top player versus just a starter, you're automatically going to get the nod as the top guy, because in the NBA, when the playoffs come, when games matter, when they're on the line, when they're pressure games, what matters more? A high functional role player or the guy that's going to score and be the leader of the team that's going to give you those extra points in the OT? I think ultimately, and that's why, I mean, we still haven't talked about him, crazy enough, but I think we can all agree that if we were to take a core or one guy, which is Luka, or one guy that's Tyrese, we're taking that one guy 10 times out of 10. So the more times that you have strikes at the guy, the higher chance your core is going to be that good. Now, I'm not saying that if you're a high functional starting wing defender, you don't have value, but I think that's a lot easier to come in contact with than a guy that has a ceiling to be a top 15-20 player in the NBA. I think that just has more value. So I think it does matter when you're comparing these other good cores to each other. I think it matters a lot.
Sam.
Go ahead, Sam.
So I'm the tiebreaker. This is a very unique situation because you look at these cores and I think they're all better than this good core. And I think that they're close to that Magic.
And you arguably have arguably have the best wing defender on your team in the league. Arguably.
And so I put them in good. And I really like this core. So I think that we can put them in elite because they've also had someone like a Brandon Ingram and a CJ McCollum who have helped, because it's not all Trey Murphy and Herb, they're growing, but at some point those guys are going to have to get paid and they're probably going to move off of CJ, but CJ's been there to basically, I wouldn't say mentor Murphy, but he's tailoring him up for taking the role once CJ's gone.
That's the crazy thing. I'm not even talking about Murphy. I'm talking about Herbert. I'm saying Herbert, and Murphy's that good of a defender too.
Yeah,
Herbert is the best wing defender in the league.
I really, and Herbert also shoots over 40% from three, 43.3.
The perfect complement to any team.
3
and D.
You know what's
and
funny,
he
though?
Can slash. Go ahead.
That if we did this next year, he would not be able to be eligible. He's literally 25 and a half right now. He's probably the oldest guy on this list.
Yeah.
And he scores 11 points per game.
Okay, so I think that made it clear. We got to get him in elite before we kick him out next year.
I mean, if we're if you guys both think that this is an elite core, which I don't think with your number one guy averaging 22 in his fifth year in the league going up against Ja, if you think that constitutes in two high quality starting role guys, not guys that you go to, if that's what you think a good or an elite core is, and I'm just you guys are the majority in this position. But I
I
think that goes against what an elite core is. I think you have a guy that if he's healthy, if he's productive, he can be a really good borderline all-star, maybe an all-star, and then two guys that are high quality starters. And I don't think that's an elite core. If we're talking about for the future, I don't think that means it's an elite core. I think that's just a solid team.
what I don't know. I think they both play different role. It's like we can move on. Go, Sam.
Because when we talk
Okay.
about the Rockets, it's going to be very close. I'll tell you that right now.
All right. You said them. Let's talk
Yeah.
about them.
All right.
Talk about them.
Yeah. So
Prophesize.
you got. Let me do this. I think this is a better exercise. Would you guys rather right now, knowing what we know right now, with them in their third year, and them, is Zion in his third or fourth or fifth year? What year
It's
is
like
he
his
in?
fifth. I think it's his
It's
fifth
technically
year.
his fourth. If you count.
Well, if you count the 1
I
year he
guess,
wasn't
yeah.
in.
Right.
But okay, so let me say this. Would you rather, knowing what we know right now, have Zion at 23 or Alperen Şengün at 21? Who would you rather have for your team?
Don't make
Because
me choose,
stats-wise,
man.
no, here's the thing. Stats-wise, Alperen blows Zion out of the water as far as overall stats goes. Because let me just compare the stats real quick. We can go over this. So Zion is averaging 22, 6, and 5.
How about the record?
22, 6, and 5, huh? Well, record's a lot different when you have CJ and Brandon Ingram, but
I mean, Brandon
anyways,
Ingram, sure.
22, 6, and 5, and half a block and a steal, okay? So you got those stats in the chamber. And that's at 23 years old, so that's 2 years older than LP. So then LP is averaging 21, 9, 5, 1 steal, 1 block. And their defense is pretty comparable. I think Zion's probably a little bit better of a perimeter, but Alperen's a lot better of a post guy.
Okay, I will say that you can equally build around both of them. I would say
Okay.
that. Like I'd be okay if you gave me Sengun, I would build them around. If you gave me Zion, I'd be down to build around him.
Okay.
So it's gonna come down to how can you compare, like how can you take Herbert Jones and Trey and push.
Exactly. So Trey Murphy and Herb Jones have solid floors, right? Herb Jones is 25. Trey Murphy is, let me just do another check on how old he is, just so we know. He is 23. So those guys have very solid floors, right? But then you're gonna at some point come into contact with a Jabari Smith who has the intangibles, the length, the height, the size, the hand size, the quickness to be a good defender, but he's 5 years younger than Herb Jones. So I'm taking that potential that he's going to be able to figure it out because he's 5 years, almost 6 years younger, because he's 20. He's almost 6 years younger than Herb Jones, and he's going to be able to figure that out. Same thing with Amen Thompson. I think his profile scales to be a really good player. Jalen Green, maybe not more so. Same with Cam Whitmore. I think Cam Whitmore has a chance to be one of the better scorers in the NBA. I'm not saying he's going to be necessarily Anthony Edwards right now, but I think he can be really good, a top 15 at his position. So yeah, I just think when you have like the depth that like we talked about with the Magic, you have kind of a pool of guys to choose from. All of them are young. One guy has proven to be pretty much all-star caliber guy, and then you really just need one or two of these guys to hit. And we don't even have Tari Eason in here. He didn't make the cut, and Jalen Green didn't make the cut either. It's like you have a lot of guys to choose from, and you got that top guy as well. And all these guys, they're all young, every single one of them, except for maybe Tari. Tari might be the same age as Trey Murphy, maybe.
I think he's 25.
No, he's not
Tari
25.
23? Yeah, 23. I think sounds
Yeah,
right.
23, I think.
He's 22.
Tari's sneaky good.
Tari's 22. So all these guys are younger than Trey Murphy, but I would say all of them, besides maybe Tari, have a higher ceiling than both those guys you mentioned. That's why I think they deserve to be an elite core, because you have more guys to choose from, and they have higher ceilings, all being younger.
Tell me what makes them different than, like, say, the Portland Trailblazers position. Like,
you have that top guy that's already solidified as being that all-star caliber type of player in Alperen. I think that you can think that Scoot or Shaden are going to be that kind of guy, but we don't know yet. Whereas Alperen kind of proved it this year, where I think if he was in the East, he probably would have made the All-Star game. But obviously in the West, it's super stacked. We weren't winning a lot of games, so that hurts too. And then also, I just think that as well, we just have a very big pool of guys. I think similar to the Pistons, and we have a bigger pool than them too, but I mean, honestly, the Rockets probably have the biggest pool of young players to be able to hit from, and you just
By
need
far.
one or two to hit, and you're good. So I think the depth helps them a lot, and then having that top guy that I think, I think most people right now would probably choose Paulo over Alperen, but I think if the Rockets were in the East and they were, that 8 to 7 seed spot, I think 8 or 7, maybe 9, then I think people would have some debates about that just based on what you kind of prefer playing style wise. So I think he deserves to be in the conversation as a front guy.
What I think is, if we're comparing like cores of size 3, I don't think the Rockets really can compete against like the Orlando Magic, New Orleans. But like, if you are considering the amount of players, like you said, that you can hit, that like you just need 3 of these guys to hit, then yeah, it's
4. You mean 4?
Yeah, 4. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what you're waiting on Amen, you're waiting on Jalen, you're waiting on. I mean, you already have Sengun, and maybe Tari stays, and then
Jabari.
I guess you have Jabari. You have like what am I at? This is my 6th player. Cam.
Basically, you have a pool of like a whole starting 5 where you just need one of them to be a star, and then you're set though. And then you're set.
It's just the law of large numbers that you're playing with at this point.
Exactly, which is kind of weird because you're ultimately going to waste draft capital at some point. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't you guys agree with me that I think ultimately potential matters if we're talking about who has the potential to be a better team in the future? When you have that top guy, I mean, I understand. I get that those guys you mentioned before, they're good 3-and-D players, but they're old, and I don't know how much better they're going to get.
The best. Some of the best, not good. Some of the best 3-and-D players
Herb
you
Jones
can find in the league.
Is pretty good, but Trey Murphy is a pretty good shooter. I don't know if he's as good of a defender as you guys are making it out to seem that he is.
He's a good defender as well. He's like a second-tier defender.
He's a good defender, but I think he's not a second. He's not an all-defense second-team type of defender like Herb Jones is. I think he's kind of an above-average wing defender, but like I would say Jabari is kind of that right now, honestly. Like I would say he's also like an above-average wing defender, but he's not like an all-defense defender. Like Herb Jones, I'll give you that. Herb Jones is an elite defender, but he's also going to turn 26 in like half a year. And so I'm just not really sure, like, But yeah, they're either good or elite. I mean, you know where I stand. I think they're elite. But
I can see the Houston Rockets being an elite core just because of that pure like depth. It's such a weird reason though. Like I wouldn't want to go into the playoffs with this team, but like I would be happy with but this year, like if I had to play against like the other cores we're talking about that are elite core, I don't think I would want to pick this core against the Orlando Magic or the Pelicans. I just don't think it
Mhm.
might not end well. I think Stan Gunn can only do so much. But
Yeah. If you if
but
you
yeah, I
if
see what you're saying
if you had to
because
choose, like if someone asked you, you have to play against X team, let's just say a random team on here. You have to play against a good Raptors team in 4 years from now. Are you betting on the Rockets? You have to pick one of two teams, Rockets or Pelicans. Who are you picking to play in a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals? Let's just say there's some
I'm
movement.
picking the Pelicans to play because they're gonna be they're
Really?
good. Like if we no I'd rather play the Pelicans because they're easier. But like look at who we have in the good core. We
That's what
put
I'm
in the
that's what I'm
good
asking.
core for LaMelo Ball and Brandon and Mark when the Rockets already kind of have
They
that
already
leader
have
in
that. Yeah.
Sengun and but yet we're not teeter tottering on Mark Williams or
Exactly.
Brandon Miller. You have Cam Whitmore, Amen, Tari, even arguably Fred Van Vliet probably barely missed this list, right?
Nah,
How old
he's
is
He's
29.
like 28.
he's
Yeah,
29. He's
28,
28.
29.
I think you were probably thinking of Dylan Brooks, but Dylan Brooks isn't very good. But
Yeah.
but I mean, Tari Eason unfortunately was like the third guy who missed this list. And like he's shown some flashes to be a pretty good like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy type of player. Like where he can be
Yeah.
a really good like I think those players are pretty comparable.
Hasn't he
Tari
dropped like
Eason and
50 before? That's Tari.
Tari?
I'm pretty sure
Nah,
Tari has dropped 50 points at one point. What's his career high? I'm pretty sure it's something stupid. Like you wouldn't even expect like Tari
it's not
Easton's.
50.
It has to be
It's probably like 30. It's
his
25.
career high.
It's 25. Yeah.
Is 25. He had a crazy. I think he had like some sort of crazy like night where I'm like, who is this guy? That's when I really heard about Tari. But
It's
that
probably
was
when he
probably
had like 25, 7 steals, 3 blocks, some crazy like if we're going based off of who these guys are right now, Tari Eason's a Herb Jones type of player. He's just on a much worse team who he can't do as much or can't play as much.
okay.
But
I can put the Rockets on the elite core for that reason. It's like the fountain of youth.
they have a lot of choices, plus they have that top guy who's an all-star kind of guy, I think.
Yeah. The Houston
Yeah.
fountain of youth.
Used.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that I have to say is, I guess everything's been touched on, really.
The fountain of
Like,
youth.
You didn't really
He's-
talk during that, but, you know.
Fountain of
Yeah.
Youth.
The
But,
fountain of youth.
and I really like, that they have a coach to help progress them because if Silas was still here,
They would
we probably wouldn't.
instantly go down a
Yeah,
tier.
we'd be talking about good core or solid pieces,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
frank. So,
Yeah, I agree.
but the next team that we could talk about is the Minnesota Timberwolves. So let's see. I put them. Let's see. Trying to see. Two of us put them in elite. PT, you put them in good.
I can see it. I can see why you
think
would
it
put
was
him in
just
good.
because of that same reason where the one player is hard for me to have that core be up in the same echelon. Because obviously Anthony Edwards is one of the best players on this whole list, but who are their other guys? I'm trying to remember. McDaniels,
Nas Reed.
Nas Reed he's a good player, but to me he's in that same bracket as a Trey Murphy or maybe not the same player, but the impact. He's a good winning young player, but I don't think he's ever going to be the guy you want starting in a playoff series, or at least not as a guy, maybe as like the last guy.
I can see him good because the reason why I really remember this, I just kind of teeter-tottered because the Minnesota Timberwolves aren't that good just because of their core. It's because Anthony Edwards has risen,
It's their
and
top talent.
I mean, yeah, it's their top talent, and they're old too. They rely on Conley. They even extended Conley. Why? Because he can run the offense. And who did they get rid of to make more room for touches for Conley and Edwards? D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah.
So it's like arguably, I think they belong in good, just because it's just Anthony Edwards. What are they going to do with the other guys? Hopefully develop. Hopefully they can continue to improve. But I mean, I don't think that this core actually even improves any further than this, just because I think the Timberwolves are exactly where they want to be for the near future. You have just lean on Anthony Edwards. You have Cat, who Cat is kind of like getting up there, but Cat's entering his prime. So
It's just tough because, and this is a little off topic, but Cat just can't really stay healthy, you know. But yeah, that's why I put him in good.
Yeah, I was in that kind of like, I put him in as a elite because we finally, not finally, we've seen Ant take another step past what he's been able to do for the last few years, and they're fighting for that 1 seed in the West, But like Gage said, it's not because of this young core. If we're looking at these 4 guys that we're talking about, Ant's been a starter in all but 1 game this year. Naz Reid has started 1 game. Jaden McDaniels has started all but 1 game. And then Nickel Alexander-Walker is a bench guy.
Yeah.
So,
good players.
And yeah,
but not,
and
not
I
the
feel,
reason they're winning games.
Yeah, and I think that Peyton, you were talking to one of our friends off air a few days ago about Jaden McDaniels not playing that role or stepping up to the plate, kind of like we were expecting going into this year. And I feel like that's really fitting. And I was maybe hyping up his role just a little too much to put them into that elite category. So then I think that putting them down in good is a solid choice.
Yeah, I agree.
So then moving on to the next team, we have the Indiana Pacers. We got, I think, 2 guys going with elite again. PT, I think, did you go with
No, I think I went good
again?
on. Yeah, same reason. Same reason as before. I think Benedict Matherin's a good player, but something about him just, I don't know. I just don't really see a star. I see a good player. I see a good player someday. I don't think he's ever going to be a star though. Miles Turner missed the cut.
Correct.
Yep, and Siakam's too old, so same reason. They got a nice little young core, but it's, Nemhard's kind of a role-playing kind of guy.
What was the core? What was the core again?
It was Tyrese, Mathurin, Nemhard, and then I think Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, you can put that in good. I think those last 2 guys are big question marks. They've been trying to get them. Like here's the thing. It was well known that the Pacers kind of don't really care. Like, it's nice that the Pacers are moving with Miles Turner, but they've made it blatantly obvious that if they did have a different option, like a better option, they would have done it already. That goes with the possible signing of DeAndre Ayton. That goes with the extended minutes of pushing Isaiah Jackson in different roles throughout the season. So they're trying. It just, they're just kind of stuck with it, and that's just because all you have is Mathurin, Mathurin is still, like you said, a little wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
You would still want him. Wasn't he like at one time second in Rookie of the Year voting at one point or something crazy like that? I don't know, but yeah, it's the same thing with the Tyrese situation, or not the Anthony Edwards situation.
Yeah, for that same reason. Like this. It's funny how we did the Timberwolves and the Pacers back to back, but it's the same situation for me where I put them in as elite, but could be swayed down into the good. And I think probably like Gage and I had the same kind of idea of, hyping up that one guy just a little too much, that main guy into, just because he's an elite style player doesn't mean that core automatically goes to elite. They just don't have that help around that we've seen like the Magic or the Pelicans have. So yeah, I think putting the Pacers in good is what we should do here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 teams left. We'll go to the Dallas Mavericks. Let's see who put.
I'd say this one was probably the hardest.
I think you put them in. You put them in good here.
Nothing's changed. You can pretty much roll with that. These next couple teams, I don't think any of these teams can go further down than good because of their main player, but they can't go any higher because of their second player.
What was the core?
The core for the Dallas Mavericks was Luka, PJ Washington, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford.
Yeah, that seems like a. If I had to put them either the best of the good core or the worst of the elite core, and the reason for that is because they're like ever since PJ. You guys think PJ is gonna stay? Like PJ just showed up. I mean, PJ has been playing good.
I do, but I don't think he's I don't think he's a very good player, in my opinion. I don't think he's very good.
I think PJ is a good. I think PJ is a good piece. I think I like PJ. What did push me to think of this guy as this team as sort of elites, but it was tough, was Derek Lively. Because Derek Lively is a hand in glove fit for what the Dallas Mavericks needed.
Yeah.
He can pull up for three, he's a 7-foot center, and he can play defense. And Luka Doncic desperately needs players who can play defense for him. I just thought that
I like him more than I like PJ and Gafford, honestly, because he's
Gafford
also a rookie.
too.
I like Derek Lively a lot. I think he probably went underdrafted at 10. Honestly, I think he probably could have went 7, 8, 9 to the pay. Imagine him with Tyrese, where they took Jarris Walker.
Yeah. But looking at this core, it just highlights how important interior defense was for the Mavericks. All of these guys can play defense, and so it's kind of like if you were to, it's this core isn't just to build for, it's just to protect, it's just to build the defense around Luka Doncic. It's kind of a weird core, but it's like they weren't even aiming to build a strong core. They just needed people who can hold the fort down.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, so I think I'm still gonna go elite here. A little contradictory of the last two teams with the Wolves and the Pacers, where that one guy isn't enough to move them to elite, but I think Luka is. He's one of those guys where he's making a case for MVP now, even though the team's not doing so well, on a really, really good hot streak lately. He's shooting fairly efficiently, almost 50% from the field, 38% from three. I think he leads the league in points now, maybe still behind Joel. But if you look at his team, he is top in points, top in rebounds, top in assists, top in steals, and Derek Lively's top in blocks. And I think Derek Lively, like you both said, is a great fit for this team and doing really well. I do like PJ Washington. I like that acquisition, probably more than I should. And Daniel Gafford, he's just kind of there right now, just to be that six-man center, since Derek Lively is that guy at the center spot.
Who is their backup to Derek right now? Wait, is Derek starting? Yeah,
I think
so. 42 out of 47 games.
Who's the backup?
Maxi Kleber, I think. Probably.
Kleber?
Yeah, I think so.
Wouldn't he be a power forward, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, he's a power forward.
I'm sure they play small.
Yeah, they play a lot of small. I mean, he's only started 42. Dwight Powell has played a lot of games. Only started 8. So yeah, it looks like it's been like those three guys as the starting center. So I do think that Luka has propelled them enough to elite, and then that standard, those other three guys are just enough to keep them in there. But like Gage said, if they're in the good, then they're probably the best good. And if they're in the elite, they're probably the worst elite.
Yeah,
that sounds really weird to say.
I think that's fair. Especially, I mean, when you have Luka, who's going to be an MVP candidate every year, it's hard to argue with that. Quick question. If you pull all the NBA fans together, how many of those fans do you think believe that Anthony Edwards is better than Luka?
That's tough.
Well, it's a non-zero number because you definitely know those people are there. I think it's
10%.
probably like 3 to 5%. 10%?
Yeah.
might be
10% and 9% of them live in Atlanta, and 1% of them live in Minnesota or something. Actually, no,
Yeah.
5% live in Atlanta and 5% live in Minnesota.
so basically
That's
a very small fraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then with the Mavericks, are we going elite then?
Well,
Yeah.
that's I would put him at. I'm okay with where you guys are putting them at. Wouldn't be
I
where
put him
I'd
elite.
personally put them, but yeah.
All right.
Well, that was
So
there.
there.
You
I couldn't scroll all the way up. Sorry.
Okay.
go.
Don't freak out on me.
Man, intrinsic.
Hey,
Yeah.
actually,
His
no.
intrinsic thoughts win.
There, you happy?
There you go.
Honorable mention. Okay, so we talked about Luka. You know what we have to do now. We got to talk about Trey and the Atlanta Hawks.
It's like we just forgot about the Cavaliers.
They're the last one.
I mean, I know it's just they don't really fit with these other teams.
So with the Hawks,
I think this is pretty
PT,
easy, isn't it?
Again, good.
I think this is
just
pretty
good.
PT
easy.
is yeah. This
He's a
one,
hater.
PT's
Well, here's the thing: is
he's a hater.
Here's the thing: is I went with a pretty even scale for these teams. You know, like I set the bar where if you have one guy that's really good, but the other guys are, you know,
That's the bar.
probably good start. Yeah,
The-
I said an even bar. I said even playing field. You know, so they're where these other teams are at. However, I would say that their young core is a little bit more attractive than the Pacers or the Wolves. But they're not as. I mean, Trey's not as good as Luka. I think is kind of what it comes down to. Plus, Lively is more that Jalen Johnson kind of player, so that kind of cancels him out.
Jalen Johnson is a better player than Derek Lively. I'm sorry.
He's better, but you know, I don't know if he's worlds better. Like I don't think that he makes up the difference between Luka and Trey, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that the Atlanta Hawks, this core is capable of winning playoff games. I think so. And I think that it's not this core that is causing them to not to well, this core is not the reason why they're in the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference. It's there's a lot of more other things going on, like the Clint Capella fit. When you have a Clint Capella right there and Onyeka, who's much younger, and they're making it obvious that they're almost willing to start moving on from Clint Capella. You have a bad fit in DeJounte Murray, who, you know, he's having a good year, but you didn't get him. You didn't get him to, you know, occasionally pull up threes and not play defense. You got him to be a secondary playmaker for Trae Young, and I think this is. I mean, they've proven, right? This is the same kind of. I think besides Jalen, but who was the other guy when they beat the 76ers?
John Collins.
It was John Collins, I guess. So then I guess you're asking, is John Collins, Jalen Johnson, John Collins? I think this core is better than the one with John Collins. That's spicy, but
No,
I'm
agree
gonna
with you on that too. Actually, I just don't think it's as good as the Mavericks.
But I still put them at borderline elite. I give them the elite because I can't put them in the same field as the Hornets. You know, I just can't.
But here's the thing: if we just said, like 5 minutes ago, that the Mavericks is the worst elite core,
That was before you brought up the Atlanta Hawks.
you know, like I think, and I put them as elite. But what PT just said is like those other guys don't amount to what the Mavericks can amount to. Now, I do like Jalen Johnson. You know, he's getting to see him play and have it like probably his best game of his career.
Nuts.
He went crazy. You know, and Trae Young, you know, going from ice cold Trae to ice Trae the game. And then I do like Onyeka, but I think that him playing the center role isn't what's best for him, considering he's 6'9". So I just feel like the fit is a little bit different, and I feel like if they were to have one more guy in there that was just like,
But that's why I said he was a plug and play for Clint. How tall is Clint?
7 feet, I think.
6'10".
Is
6'10"?
he only 6'10"?
He's only 6'10".
But how long is he though?
I mean, they're both very similar players. Both. It's just that Clint follows rules a lot better.
And
That's the thing. Clint makes better decisions.
Okay, so Clint has a 7'5". I just want to see what.
Onyeka.
Yeah. Yucca's a 7'2" wingspan, so you have a 3-inch difference. And I would say Cabell is probably the better functional athlete. Onyeka doesn't really move that fluidly. He moves kind of like an undersized 5. Moves kind of slow. And
Which is what he's been playing as an
Yeah,
undersized
that's why
5.
yeah, that's why he can't really play the 4 because he's not athletic enough to.
I'm
But
surprised that you didn't bring up Sadiq though.
Sadiq is not on contract next year, and then with his
Ooh.
injury, I don't
Tore
know
his
if
ACL. Yeah,
I don't know if he's going to be
he's probably
re-signed.
toast.
Which, if
Yeah.
Sadiq was on contract for next year, maybe, just maybe, that would have been good enough to sway me back to elite. But I think that, yes, they're in the same category as the Hornets, but we know that they're above the Hornets.
I feel. Go ahead.
I was gonna say realistically, in the top 3 or the elite good core, we could probably have like 2 sub tiers in those cores.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just
Started
kind of
broken
how
up
it
a little
goes.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel bad. Like looking at the Atlanta Hawks roster, I feel bad because DeAndre Hunter didn't make the cut either, right? Because he was too old. He's 20.
Yep.
What is he? 28,
26, I think.
26. Yeah, I feel bad because that one time when I went to Subway and I saw DeJounte Murray, I didn't notice that standing right next to him was DeAndre Hunter, and I felt so bad because I was so shook that it was DeJounte Murray that I didn't even see that the guy next to him was DeAndre Hunter. So if I were to ever speak to DeAndre, if I could say some words to DeAndre Hunter, I could say, bro, I'm so sorry. It's not that you're not a good player. It's just I've had DeJounte Murray on 3 of my fantasy teams.
No,
So it's just
you can call a spade, Gage. He's just not a very good player. I mean, he's not a bad player, but he's not very good either.
but still
No, but I understand from a human aspect, yeah, you could have acknowledged the guy.
I didn't even acknowledge DeAndre Hunter. That's so bad.
Yeah.
I feel sick.
At least it wasn't like, hey, DeJounte, can I have a picture? And then you take a picture of DeJounte or with them, and then DeAndre's like, you want a picture with me? And you were like, nah, I'm good.
If he would have said something like that, I would have noticed it was DeAndre. But now DeAndre thinks I'm a casual.
Right. He probably thinks you're a tool.
Yeah. And he's gonna remember you next time he sees you at Subway.
Yeah. But anyways, moving on. We got
last team. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers, and so someone put them in Dynasty, and the other 2 put them in Elite. So, Gage, Cleveland, a Dynasty?
Tell me the core.
It is. Let's
Mobley,
see.
Garland, Allen.
Yep, that sounds like a good Dynasty core. Worst Dynasty core, but great Dynasty core. They have all the pieces. They just need a player like Donovan Mitchell.
Can I
raise them up?
Can I tell you why they're not a dynasty core?
Okay.
Yes. They kind of hate when we save this team for last because it's kind of debatable. It's a debatable team. I feel like these players that we mentioned all have very fatal flaws. Very fatal. And I think the Rockets have this problem too. I think every player, okay, let's just go through the 3 players. And was there a 4th player or no?
No, Okoro is not on contract.
Okoro, okay. And even if he was, I mean, he's probably just a starter in the league. So, Garland, he's hurt a lot. Coupled with, he's very undersized. He's very streaky shooter. He's a good playmaker, but as a player, I would say not even as a shooter. As a player, he's just very streaky. He can give you 7 points the next game, and the next game he can give you 25 and 12. So he's just very off and on, coupled with being hurt off and on for the last couple years. It's just not a great combination for sustainable success as you get older. And I think him being undersized, like that hurts even more. So still think he can be really good. I mean, I think he was an all-star a couple years ago, maybe, or was he not quite an all-star? He's a good player, but if I had to bet on him or Tyrese Maxey being better, I'd probably bet on Tyrese Maxey because he's a little taller. But with Jared Allen, I think Jared Allen plays a very specific role that's very good. But I don't think that him and Mobley are ever going to be a pair that's going to equal playoff sustainable impact because they're two non-shooters who are pretty bad shooters. I don't even think Jared Allen takes threes. When Mobley takes threes, they're really bad. I think he's somewhere on that 20% mark. So, and I just need to see them get better at creating on offense. I mean, I'm not asking them to be go-to scorers, but I'm asking, can you make, a post fade? Can you hit a post hook? Can you basically do anything besides finish lobs that are wide open? Because just doing that is a very big black hole on offense. They're very good defensive players, but when you're one-sided like that, it's really hard to have two of them. I think theoretically, if on the Wolves right now you had two Rudy Goberts instead of one Cat and one Gobert, the team would look completely different. It wouldn't work. Even though those are two of the best rim protectors in the league, it wouldn't work. And I think the reason why it works in Cleveland is because you have two dynamic guards opposed to just one. And then also I think obviously Mobley's a lot more dynamic than Gobert. So
I think
it's a little different. But just offensively, I just don't think you can have two defensive bigs that can't shoot in today's game. I think if it was Brook Lopez, I could see it, but.
And I still believe that those are flaws that these players can work on. It's no secret that one easy way to elevate the Cleveland Cavaliers is just Evan Mobley just needs to be able to shoot the ball at a reasonable rate. That's it. If he can do that, then he is one of the best. Like this team is one of the best in the league. Without that, you still have a pretty good team, second in the Eastern Conference, and that's because Evan Mobley and Jared Allen aren't like your normal everyday centers. What sets them apart is that they're not flat-footed when it comes into the perimeter. In fact, the Cleveland Cavaliers are the best perimeter defensive team in the league. It's just, and it's not even, they didn't just stumble upon that. It's because you have those three players that can lock down on defense. You have Garland, who's essentially the glue. When Sexton was supposed to be the guy, Sexton was the guy who was drafted ahead of Garland. Well, it's because Garland had proved himself as as more impactful, towards the team's success. They liked Ricky Rubio as well. Like, I feel like Garland kind of picked up that Ricky Rubio kind of success, and I just think if you give this core someone who can be the leader. Now that's what I mean. Another weakness of this team, and maybe this does knock them down, is that you really need a player who's a bona fide MVP. But if you put a bona fide MVP on with this team, say like LeBron or something, or like someone who's proven it, this team, I mean, you really this core is all you really need to pair with that guy. So yeah, they're not OKC because OKC has Shy, and no, they're not Memphis because Memphis has Ja. But without the MVP, this is as good as core as you get without that MVP guy. That's all I'm saying.
So my biggest thing, and this is kind of my logic when I was deciding between Dynasty or Core. So you're contemplating buying tickets to an OKC Thunder game, and you buy them. Who's the one guy that you really want to see? You'd be upset if he sits.
Shy.
Now it's the Memphis Grizzlies. You buy tickets to Memphis Grizzlies. Who's the one guy that you hope is playing? Ja. Who's the one guy that you really hope is playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Donovan Mitchell.
Who's not on this list.
Exactly.
Who would be the next one? You can pick any of those three guys. But you won't be as upset.
They're not blockbuster.
That's just what it comes down to for me. We said Shy. Shy's in this list. We said Ja. Ja's in this list. And Pelicans. Zion goes down. You still get sad, but now you're kind of like even more sad because now there's other good guys. Don't get me wrong, but it's just a step down. Like if you go to the OKC Thunder, you don't see Shy, who's could win MVP. You're disappointed. Look at all the fans that were so disappointed with Ja this year. Only playing I think 11 games. Missing that 25-game suspension and then getting hurt. It's really tough.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like with Cleveland's 3 that they got that I'd be too bummed if I couldn't see them play.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd put them in elite, which is still good. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Sorry, elite.
Sure. Barely.
I mean, they're in the higher end. But here's another thing, real quick, just real briefly. How much worse would they be if Donovan Mitchell wasn't on the team? Let's say if they had Mike Conley instead. They'd be what?
Playing.
Maybe exactly.
No. Actually, no. We even
seed.
saw
Like
they were still in the
play.
playoffs without Donovan. They had Ricky Rubio and they were leading on Rondo, right? I'm pretty sure Donovan wasn't part of that. They had Sexton. What was their record? I think they were like 5th. Maybe
what
6th.
What year was that?
The year before Donovan came.
So 2022 to 2023. So the 2023 playoffs, or I guess 2022 playoffs.
2 years younger. All these guys when after the James Harden trade, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
So
2021.
The Cavaliers didn't make the playoffs. It was the 2022 playoffs because in September of 22 is when Donovan Mitchell got traded.
But we need to know how good they were with the acquisition. I mean, they were leaning on Karis LeVert a lot because they wanted Karis LeVert to be that guy for them, and Karis LeVert just proved too streaky. But it was whatever portion of the season that happened.
Yeah, I found it. So there was a team that had. It was a bit different of a team, but it was the first team that had Mobley, Laurie, Garland. It had LeVert, K-Love, Jetty, Okoro. That team was an 8 seed, so you're looking at about an 8 seed.
But they weren't even the 8 seed. They didn't because they lost in the play-in.
You're right. They did lose. Well, yeah, but they were in the play-in basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're getting about an 8 seed, and I think if that's the type of core that you have, then we're probably not putting them. We're not putting them in Dynasty, that's for sure. And who knows what Mobley and they would be looking at.
We could be stretching with the elite.
Exactly.
Nah, not stretching with the elite.
Not in hindsight, because with the productivity that they've had, you can't put them any lower. But if they never got Donovan, who knows? They could have been around that 7-8 seed for.
I mean, they were still improving though. Like they've improved.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
Garland was Garland all-star, or was Jarrett an all-star? Pretty sure Jarrett was an all-star. Since then,
that's a good question because I feel like Jarrett might have been, but
I think Jarrett was an all-star.
He was 1 year, and it was that.
And
year.
And Garland also an all-star.
That year.
Mobley,
Yes.
borderline rookie of the year.
Yes. Yeah, they had guys. Yeah, they definitely had guys. So but
then
that
elite
team was an 8 seed. Yeah. Yeah, they're still an elite. They would be an elite. Yeah.
All right, so then that's our tier list. In the young cores tier list, we have Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies in Dynasty. In the elite, we have Orlando Magic, New Orleans Pelicans, Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, and Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, not in that order. In the good core, Charlotte Hornets, Toronto Raptors, Portland Trail Blazers, San Antonio Spurs, Miami Heat, Detroit Pistons, Minnesota Timberwolves, Indiana Pacers, and Atlanta Hawks. And with just having some solid pieces, Washington Wizards, Chicago Bulls, Golden State Warriors. The honorable mentions were the Denver Nuggets, Utah Jazz, Sacramento Kings, and Los Angeles Lakers. And the do not qualifies were Philadelphia 76ers, Los Angeles Clippers, Phoenix Suns, New York Knicks, Brooklyn Nets, Boston Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks. Guys, how do we think this looks?
Why didn't Brooklyn qualify?
Brooklyn.
I think they didn't have. They had one guy who is Cam Thomas. I think Daron Sharp is a decent young player, but he's not anything you can really know what he is right now. And then I don't know if they have another guy after that.
Nick Claxton and Lonnie Walker are both not on contract next year.
Yep, that's what it was. And they don't own their pick this year, so they're not going to get any better.
So yeah, they're cooked.
Yeah.
But that's Is anyone in a worse situation? I remember that situation was pretty bad. But
Worse? No, because they don't have their own picks. If they had their own picks, I would say it's a lot better. But they don't have their own picks. They fired their head coach. I would say their best player has regressed to probably what the Suns thought he was or something.
Kyrie ruined that place.
Or Sean Marks.
Was it Kyrie or was it James?
Was it Sean Marks, the GM? I think it
Joe
might have been a little
Tsai.
bit of all.
Yeah. Or maybe.
The mayor.
The mayor.
Maybe it was Ben
The mayor.
Simmons.
The mayor.
This all started when they wanted to move out of New Jersey.
Yeah.
But all right. So is there any last things that you guys need to say?
Is OKC going to win a championship
No.
in the near, let's say, within the next 4 years?
Well, I sure as heck hope so, because otherwise our tier list was wrong.
I don't know. It's always hard
Dynasty,
to tell.
right?
This is Dynasty.
What do dynasties do?
They win.
They fail.
They fail, yeah.
Tell that to the Warriors, buddy.
I'll tell that to the Thunder before the Thunder.
But once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
Gage Zollicoffer.
I have him PT.
Thanks for listening.